All right, welcome back for our next installment of learning some of the 3D CAD tools. So I'm in my document to practice and play around with those tools. I just titled it 3D CAD tools. And in the previous videos, we looked at work planes. Kind of made a big mess of planes, but just now we understand that there's a plane tool and there's a lot of different ways to make planes. If you want to get a surface, a plane defined in space exactly where we want. Remember, planes are foundations for sketches and sketches are foundations for using these 3D tools like extrude, revolve, etc. After that, we went on to the next video that showed using the revolve tool. So revolving involved taking a sketch, okay, like that, spinning it around an axis that could be a boundary or an edge of that sketch to create a 3D object. Right now I have a section view turned on, slicing right through the middle. If I turn that off, these will all be, you'll get the full effect. But I wanted the section view turned on so you could see that, right? Our sketch ends up being half of the section view when you do a full revolve. Okay, so we went through and just made a variety of those. Here's me illustrating that an axis does not have to be the edge, and then that would result in a hole. So we played around with those. I don't want to recap all of that. And today we're going to go on to a new topic, a new tool called Sweep. And we're also going to look at the Helix tool and how that works with Sweep. So I've created a new part studio by hitting the Insert New Tab button, created a new part studio, and renamed it Sweep and Helix. All right, so try to follow along. You pause the video when needed and create these things. So a sweep, let me just do, I guess, a really basic one. First, I'm going to do a sketch on the front plane. I'll hide those planes right now. And then let me just make a path. Okay, I'm going to make a little sketch. It's going to be some lines. I'm just going in kind of a little U shape. This is not going to be a closed sketch. That's it. Kind of looks like some handlebars. But right now, this sketch has no thickness, no surface area, no volume. It's just a sketch of line segments. It's not three-dimensional yet. So the sweep tool, what it does is it's like the extrude tool, but it follows a path. So it involves a second sketch that acts as a path. This is actually going to be my path. So I'm starting with a sketch. I'm going to rename it, and this sketch is going to be called the path. Okay. All right. Now what I need is something to extrude along this path. All right. Well, now knowing about planes comes in handy because I want to pick one of the two endpoints as the starting for this sweep. So I'm going to use the plane tool. I'm going to, point normal is the correct one. Like of these choices, mine's already on that. Usually it defaults to offset. I'm going to use point normal. So I'm going to define a point that the plane should contain, and it will be normal to a line segment. So by choosing that, I have to make two selections, both a point and a line segment to be normal to. So two selections here. Don't get another point. Make sure you get the line segment. All right. And I will accept that. And that plane is a plane that's right there at the endpoint. So I needed that plane because I now need to sketch a profile that will follow this path. So, right, it started with a sketch, that's the path, a plane at the starting point, a sketch on that plane. Okay. And what I'm going to sketch right here is just going to be a basic center point circle. I'll have the center of my circle be at that point. I'm not dimensioning this. I'm just trying to illustrate the idea of the sweep tool. And that's it. So I've made a sketch, that's the path. I've made a plane that is normal to the line segment where I'm starting. And at that point, I've now made a sketch on that plane that is a circle. And now I'm ready to use the sweep tool. The sweep tool looks kind of like a noodle here. It's like a little S-curve, like a tube. So I'm going to choose that. And I have to select two different things. So the first thing that's highlighted in blue says choose a face or sketch region. That's going to be my circle, a sketch region, a closed shape. Okay. After that, the blue highlighted is still on that region or on that field because I could potentially select more things that are going to get swept, but I'm done. So I just had that circle. So once selecting that, I will click on the red box. The red means like, hey, warning, you have to give me something here. When you're ready to select the item that represents this field, you need to click on it so Onshape knows that's what you're about to select. So I click on that field, it turns blue, and then I go choose it in the graphic window. So my sweep path is going to be these line segments. and I can make a shape. It almost looks like plumbing. I was thinking of this like handlebars on a bike, and I will accept that. So there's the basics of a sweep. Okay, I'd like to see you guys do some examples as well. I'm going to go ahead and do another one on the front plane, and this time I'm going to make something that looks like a paperclip. I'm trying to avoid using the origin on purpose, so I'm going to hide my planes by pressing P a couple times. I'm going to start up here, and a paperclip, this is going to be the path of the paperclip. So I'm going to go vertical, and then this is a cool feature if you're not observing this yet, but Onshape wants to make another line segment. But if I bring my cursor back to that starting point and then pull away from it a second time, it toggles to an arc, a tangent arc tool. And that's really convenient for this profile I want to make. So I'm going to click right here, kind of getting a nice semicircle. Then I'm going to go straight down. Now it goes back to the line segment tool. I'm going to go past that point, straight down, trying to avoid the origin. Click there, and then I want another semicircle here. So it starts to make a line segment. I simply bring my cursor back to that point and move it again, and I get an arc. So I'm going to make that a semicircle arc. And we're going to go one more loop here. I'm going to stop shy here. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, if you want to go look at pictures of paper clips, I'm not really worried about that. Okay, so here is a sketch that represents a path. So this is going to be path paperclip. Right? Now, we need a profile that's going to follow the path. I'd like that profile to be a circle at one of the endpoints. How about this one? In order to sketch a circle right there, I need a plane to sketch on. So I'm going to use my plane tool again, point normal again. There's the point, and here's the line segment that the plane will be normal to. I'll tilt it a little bit so you can see. There's the plane. That's my plane. I'm going to sketch on that plane. Right? We put a plane there so I could sketch right there in space, and I will put a small circle. Now, I don't want that circle to be too big because I don't want it to kind of pass and intersect itself when it comes back on that next line. So I really want this radius to be less than half the distance over there. And I'm just eyeballing this, okay? Again, just illustrating the basics of the sweep tool. So you can see we made a path. We then made a plane and an endpoint. Plane, normal at endpoint of path for the paperclip. And then this is my profile. The paperclip. And then the last tool is to sweep. So I turn on the sweep tool. I'm going to choose the sketch region is going to be my circle. That's the only region. So I click here in red. The sweep path is now the next thing I'm going to get. And it kind of wants me to go select it in sections instead of grabbing the entire continuous piece. Like that. At that point, I will accept, and I now have a three-dimensional paperclip. That's something that has surface area, has volume, has size, has mass, where before my path did not, right? Those were just lines and arcs, and that was not three-dimensional at all. Okay? All right. You might hit pause here and try to do that yourself. So next up, we're going to look at another tool that often gets used with the sweep tool. And this tool is going to allow us to create a path. It's called the Helix tool. So I pulled up in class some examples like I maybe have to search. That was one, but I thought like a spring that's tapered, battery. I feel like I see these kind of springs all the time. Every time I go to change, you know, little batteries, AA, AAA batteries, I feel like there's usually a little spring and it might have this shape. So it's in a coil, but it doesn't have the same diameter or radius at the beginning and the end of the coil. So how can I make something that sweeps along that coiled path or helix path? So there is a helix tool. It looks like that coil. You might search for it. This tool is not inside a sketch. It is in the 3D tools. So to find it, you will have to be outside of a sketch. Now to make a helix, I need something to reference, and I don't have that thing yet, so I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm going to hit the X in a second. I need either a cylinder or cone, an axis, which is a line, or a circle. To me, I find the axis the simplest, easiest thing. It seems intuitive and makes sense, and I feel like it gives me flexibility to edit later. So that's what we're going to do. An axis is a line. So I need a line that can be referenced inside this tool. So this is going to take 3 sketches. Okay. So my first sketch, I'm going to start on the front plane. I'm going to sketch on the front plane a simple line. And I'm going to come out here to the right. And that's a vertical line based on the constraint that showed up. Okay. So I have a line. Now that I have a line, so this is, I'll rename it. That sketch is the axis of helix. And it's just a line. Very simple, right? So find that helix tool, turn it on, and then I have to tell Onshape what am I going to use to define the helix. I'm going to use a line or an axis. Then I have to go select it in my graphic window. And at that point, I get something that looks like what I was expecting, a little bit of a coil, right? And there are different attributes, variables that you can change. You can change how you're going to control it, the number of turns versus pitch, which is more of a rate, kind of number of turns per length, etc. So I'll just stay on turns right now, keep it maybe a little more simple. You see a start angle. So 0 degrees is a point kind of right on that plane. If I change this, how about I go 25 degrees, you'll see that the helix is going to rotate a little bit. If I went 90, I should see it rotate a quarter of a turn from the original starting position, okay? So 45 should be like 1/8 of a turn, etc. So you can rotate it to where it's going to start. The start radius, this is the radius down here. So think of the width across. The radius, they're going to define, though, not the diameter, the radius. So from the axis out to that first point, it defaulted to 1 inch, but you can make that value smaller or you can make it bigger, okay? Next is the end condition. You have different ways to control the end. I'm going to stick on height where I can just put in a height. So right now it's going 1 inch, but I can make it taller, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, etc. Now in this case, as I change the height, it's not adding turns, it's simply stretching that out. Down below, I can specify the number of turns. So if I wanted this to turn 4 times per inch, I could put a 16 here for 4 inches of travel of length that I would get 16 full turns, which would be 4 per inch. Okay, so you've got some variables, right, to play around with. You can change if it's clockwise versus counterclockwise. And the next thing I'm going to show is this end radius. So at the beginning, right, we had a radius of, what do I have it on? 2. I have 2 inches. Well, it's ending at a radius of 2. It's still the same size circle as it spirals. But we can choose to have it go towards a different radius on the other end of this helix. So you can see I can make that 1 or a half or whatever. And that's how you get that tapered effect. So that's the basics of this helix menu. Again, didn't cover everything, but I gave you some basics. I'm going to accept that helix. And at this point, you can see that I have 2 sketches. Although this is a 2D sketch and helix is not, it's counted as a curve. Down below, you see that it has added a new category in this menu. So other than parts, we now have curves. So it's like a 3-dimensional sketch. This is still not a part, right? It has no surface area, no volume, no mass, right? It's just a path in space. So it took a sketch with a line to then make the helix, which is a special curve. And now we need a profile. And to put a profile, we need to put it kind of at the starting point. Well, to put a sketch right here, I'm going to need something to sketch on. So what do I need? You got it. I need a plane. The plane tool I'm going to use here is not point normal. That seems somewhat intuitive. Very similar. It's going to be a point and a curve. So instead of a point and a line, I'm choosing a point and a curve. Okay, so you can choose 2 things. Choose the endpoint, and, so that's one thing selected, and the curve, the helix. So I have 2 selections, and that will create a plane right there at that point. You see the preview of it? So I'm going to accept that, and now I can sketch a profile right there. So I'm going to sketch on this plane. I'm going to, again, just keep it simple. I'm going to do a little circle and accept that. And that will be what I sweep. So I'm going to use the sweep command. Here's my profile. I'm done choosing profile, so I click on the red box to tell Onshape I'm now going to choose a path. I click that. And this one's got a lot more geometry and more computing to do for the program. So it takes a second here as it processes all that geometry. And eventually it comes out like that. Right? I can hide that helix curve. if I don't want to see it inside it. And there you go. It looks like a spring. Now, if you think that was a much tighter coil than I intended, well, you could go back and edit the helix. I had it doing 16. What if I half that to 8? It'd still start and stop at the same height. It'll still go in the same direction, all that, but it's just going to have half the number of turns as it works its way from the beginning to the end. And that'll look like a little more loosely wound spring. Okay? So there is the basics of the Helix tool. There you go.